The history books of Final Fantasy XIV are riddled with blank pages. From each astral era, every umbral calamity, the lore is as fragmented as the world itself. However, while the ancient stewards of this brilliant star might be reluctant to share their knowledge, it is possible to collect these pieces and form the picture on our own. But such knowledge comes at a price, and will only be acquired by those willing to tread a world covered in magic, monsters, and living gods. Welcome to the Wizards and Warriors series on the history of Final Fantasy XIV, beginning with one of the greatest civilizations the world ever knew, the Allagan Empire. As we'll see, this high-tech society created many brilliant devices, but there's one thing even they didn't realize needed an upgrade: wallets. Stop hauling around sacks of Allagan gold pieces and try something better from our sponsor, Ridge. Their wallets downsize the usual lumps of materials needed to carry cards and cash, giving you a sleek and stylish wallet that is not only smaller than even the smallest wallet we had, but comes with a lifetime guarantee. It's made from military-grade materials and basically isn't gonna let you down when the Primals start whipping at your heels. There's space for 12 cards, and there's a banded clip system if you want to attach cash to the side as well. It all comes in over 30 colours, it's got over 50,000 5-star reviews, offers a 45-day money-back guarantee if you change your mind, comes packed with replacement components, and has RFID blockers to fight digital thieves. It's everything your old wallet wishes it was, or perhaps the wallet of someone you want to get a gift for with the holidays coming along. Well, get it cheaper by using our link in the description and coupon code WW for 10% off. We begin our journey on a world called Hydaelyn. This planet gained its name from a goddess whose voice could be heard echoing from the heart of the world. Here there are countless varieties of monsters and people, with the most common mortal races of man being known as the adaptable Hyr, honourable Ellis, clever Lalafell, rugged Rogadin, traditional Mikote, proud Aura, mystical Viera, and respectable Hrothgar. These races and their various cultures make up the bulk of the world's population and spearhead most historic events. But our story brings us to Eorzea, a land located on the continent of Aldenard. This place is sacred, as energy, called aether, which is responsible for creating life and magic, is denser here than anywhere else in the world. It's within this land that the Allagans would eventually emerge. The history of this empire begins in the scorching heat of the Third Umbral Calamity, also known as the Calamity of Fire. The Calamities are cataclysmic events that cover every inch of the planet for years, with every age afterwards being called an astral era. The first calamity was that of wind, scarring the world with constant tornadoes and hurricanes. The second was that of lightning, as massive bolts of electricity would fall like rain. This, the third calamity, saw the entire world plagued by stifling heat. Crops withered and died, lakes dried up, and it felt as if the entire world had become akin to a desert. The various races and cultures that populated the world at this point were very superstitious, believing that the sun itself was punishing them for trying to stand at the side of gods through the creation of magic and sorcery in the second astral era. While the third umbral calamity would humble the survivors of this tragedy, they became wary of the gods. So if the use of spellcraft to emulate the divine was forbidden, then they'd attempt to uplift themselves through the hands of man alone. Eventually, the heat of the third calamity subsided, allowing the world to return to normal. This gave way to the third astral era, and an age of science had begun. The races of Eorzea that had abandoned the excessive worship of gods found that they had more time to spend on things like scientific research. No longer were people simply concerned with what magic could do for them. Instead, they developed various tools and devices that could use the energy of aether. Most commonly, this condensed energy is seen as elemental crystals, and they found ways to use them to power a variety of devices. This only fueled their passion for discovery, as practices like chemistry began to emerge as well. But amongst all the people trying to create the next best thing stood a man who would eventually control most of the world. the great and powerful Zande took to the field. Zande was a man of mystery. He appeared within Eorzea seemingly out of nowhere, but when he arrived, everyone saw him as a genius. His knowledge of both magic and the material surpassed what many could imagine. This vast understanding of the world, combined with his charismatic personality, made people flock to him in droves, eager to work alongside or learn from him. As groups of followers began to grow into massive organizations, Zande's influence started to birth a new nation. The culture of this budding society was rich with diversity as he welcomed scientists, mages, priests and scholars from all over Eorzea. In time, the magical and scientific development of his people couldn't be matched, and shortly after, the nation of Allag was officially created. Being the most advanced nation to rise in the wake of the Third Umbral Calamity, Zande and his forces were unmatched. By making exclusive use of both technological might and battle mages, their nation's military was already a force to be reckoned with. Zande would spread his nation's influence throughout the entirety of Eorzea, hoping to bring all of its people under one unified roof. The various tribes and small towns across the land stood no chance of winning. It was with shows of strength that Zande encouraged many people to peacefully surrender to his growing country. Upon realizing the benefits of becoming one with the nation of Allag, most conceded. Those few groups that refused to back down without a fight were overwhelmed and made part of his nation regardless. After annexing large sections of Eorzea, Zande crowned himself emperor, and so began the years of the mighty Allagan Empire. Over time, Zande would start to promote the wisest and most powerful mages in his country to stand as military leaders and overseers of scientific development. This proved to be the best possible move, as embracing magic instead of shunning it made sure the minds of his followers were open and curious instead of short-sighted and paranoid. Eventually, a breakthrough was made, as the spellweavers and engineers began to discover ways to hybridize magic with technology. With the right enchantments, siege weapons would not only shoot further, but they would strike harder as well. Similarly, cranes made to lift heavy objects were pushed 10 times past their normal weight limits with these advancements. This made the minds of creative individuals run wild, wondering how far they could push the bounds of magic and physics. The fusion of spells and science was steadily applied to everything, from construction and agriculture to military and medicine. This became its own unique field of development, and was officially dubbed ffXIV. It's on the foundations of ffXIV that the Allagan Empire would grow into a paradise. With this new revolutionary field of research, their society was finally without equal, and thus began the Allagan's Golden Age. At the peak of his time as emperor, Zande had conquered all of Eorzea, and the glory of his country was there for all to see. But no man lives forever, not even the emperor. Zande knew that in order to maintain the empire's strength after his death, a strict set of rules and expectations needed to be set in place. So it was that his direct descendants would follow his example even after his passing. These new emperors would do as their founder demanded, and continue the expansion of their country across all 3 of the great continents. Once the rest of Aldenard was secured, it would only be a matter of time as they conquered the rest of Ilsabard and Othard. Because of the power brought on by ffXIV, no other nation on the 3 great continents could stand up to the empire for long. Gradually, all of them would live under the Allagan flag. With no enemy that could possibly stand up to them, the empire entered a time of peace that would ultimately benefit everyone. Even the conquered nations were able to partake of the benefits that came with imperial rule. Advanced science and medicine saw their people prosper like they never had before, and all living within the 3 continents would enjoy this peace for generations. They even began crafting various machines that would make their day-to-day lives even easier. One such creation was the Circus Tower, known by its more common name, the Crystal Tower. This gigantic magical battery stood as a testament to what mortal men are truly capable of when given the chance, and the clean energy this tower provided the Empire would benefit the lives of countless people. However, the Allagan Empire would soon realize that paradise isn't truly everything you'd hope it is. After many generations, the Allagan people no longer knew the true meaning of things like pain, suffering, and trauma. They could have almost anything they wanted and live long, carefree lives thanks to their medicine and technology. But without any threats to overcome or strife to measure against their joy, their happiness steadily became hollow. People became lazier and content to indulge in selfish pleasures, whilst their machines did most of the day-to-day work for them. The Allagans quite literally became bored with life. As such, their society began to spoil and fester like an infection. Things like reason, empathy, and even love started to disappear as the Allagan people became numb to their own existence. But the worst part arose when inflicting horrors upon their fellow man became a source of entertainment. The Allagan Empire was now fully corrupt, spoiled by its own glory. Only a handful of intellectual groups remained. They could still think rationally about the future of their country, and what they saw on the horizon was a complete societal collapse. As they debated on how to correct the direction of their failing empire, one man would take it upon himself to do just that and more, the scientist Amon. He had observed the empire's fall from grace with disgust, and he saw the selfish whims of its people as ugly blemishes in need of fixing. He came to the realization that what the empire needed wasn't a new invention, but a strong leader. Though instead of waiting for one such person to arise, Amon would create one. In fact, he would recreate the greatest leader in Allagan history. He would bring back Emperor Zande. After unethical experiments that resulted in the altered minds and bodies of his colleagues, Amon began the process of cloning Zande. But this time he wouldn't live a mortal life. Amon would give Zande an immortal body so that he might rule for all eternity. Eventually he succeeded, and Emperor Zande walked the earth once more. After a few days of educating Zande on everything that had happened in his absence, the Emperor rolled his eyes in annoyance and decided to get to work immediately. He began by assassinating the current Allagan Emperor, as well as executing anyone that dared to stand in his way. Most Allagan people had become so powerless that none could stand up to his might. After seizing power, Zande declared the 3 great continents was not enough for his empire, so they were going to liberate a massive continent to the south. They were going to invade Mericidia. As Amon predicted, the fear of Zande's wrath had injected pain back into the hearts of the Allagan people, and their empire began to mobilize just like it had in ages past. With pride, Amon stood by Zande's side as the empire began moving their military might towards the shores of Mericidia. Societies that lived alongside dragons had long since endured here, and the dragon's leader, Dawnworm Bahamut, would meet the empire on the fields of battle. His might held them back for the longest time, but after creating fiendish chimeras to outnumber and overpower him, Bahamut would die and leave Mericidia defenseless. However, the people would not take this lying down, and summoned godlike entities called Primals to push back the Empire's forces. As living things born from raw aether and the unflinching faith of those that summoned them, the Primals were a force that the Empire had trouble overcoming. But this made Zande's blood race with excitement, as his military would devise creative ways to outmaneuver and subdue these would-be gods. The Primals would fall and be captured by the Empire, preventing more summoning. Yet the climax of this war would only happen when an image of Dawnworm Bahamut would be summoned into the form of a Primal. This new Primal Bahamut would become the greatest threat to the Empire's crusade. But instead of worrying about casualties, Zande's madness began to show as he enjoyed the back and forth this war had created. Like a massive game of chess with people's lives on the board, he kept playing. But even this new form of Bahamut couldn't stand up to the darkness that Zande was about to unleash. Emperor Zande had made a pact with the Cloud of Darkness, a demonic entity from a hellish realm called the Void, and with her power, he unleashed legions of void scent upon Bahamut and Mericidia both. This was the final play, as the combined power of the Void and a new weapon called Omega defeated and captured Bahamut. They sealed the dragon away in a red sphere called Dalamud, which was made to orbit the world as a second moon. While the Empire's campaign against Mericidia was a success, many Allagans saw only cruelty and insanity on full display. They knew that once the war was over, a new reign of terror was bound to begin, and that the Allagan people, while foolish, would be made to suffer. Many groups would put plans into place to safeguard the Empire's best interest should the worst come to pass, but eventually a massive revolution to dethrone the Mad Emperor would occur. Zande would retreat to the Crystal Tower and attempt to use it to open a massive gate to the void and allow the Cloud of Darkness itself to overrun the entire world. But Zande made a fatal error. Due to his actions, the world's ether was unstable, and his attempt to use the tower to such an end was the last straw. The very earth beneath the Crystal Tower shattered, and the monument sank beneath the ground, as earthquakes began to ravage everything the Empire had worked to build. These tremors spread across the world, and so began the fourth umbral calamity, the Calamity of Earth, beginning a tragic end to the prosperous Allagan Empire. There were people within the Empire that wanted to prevent this outcome, but Amon's madness had become Zande's mania, and together they sowed the seeds of chaos and destruction, not only for their empire, but for the entire world. There are countless lessons that can be taken from the events of the Third Astral Era, but this will end our first episode on the recorded history of Hydaelyn. In our next episode, we will understand why so much history was lost during the Fourth Astral Era, and how the Fifth Era was a time of peerless magic and spellcraft. More videos on the history of the Final Fantasy XIV universe are on the way, and we're planning to cover the battles of many other fantasy, sci-fi and space opera universes, so make sure you have subscribed and pressed the bell button. Please consider liking and sharing as it helps immensely, and don't forget to comment. We'll try to read and respond to every comment, as we want to know what you think about this video and which videos you hope to see in the future. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.